Living Power with Dan Hurst.
Characteristic is an ability to handle conflict by defining the source and creating the solution to the benefit of all. Now, what had happened in Nehemiah 5, there were a lot of the people had come together, and they started, they started loaning them money is what happened. There was a famine in the land at the time, and things were very difficult, and they were running out of food. And so the wealthier people started loaning money to their brothers and sisters, their Jewish brothers and sisters. And the problem was that, remember I said that the reason that Cyrus the Great wanted people to go back to their homeland was so that they would be productive and settle and build and produce, and therefore there would be more taxes, and so he would be able to produce greater revenue. That was one of the reasons why Cyrus the Great wanted them to go back. So these Jews had left, they were no longer in exile, which meant now they had responsibilities for taxes. And the fact that there was a famine in the land didn't affect Cyrus the Great. They still had to pay the taxes. And so they had to pay taxes, and so they couldn't, and so they were borrowing money from each other. And so they were borrowing money, and they were charging an exorbitant interest rate. Wait till you see what the interest rate is. They were borrowing they were borrowing money, and it was difficult to pay it back because they were having to pay taxes. They didn't have enough money to pay back the loan, and so then they were having to sell their sons and daughters into slavery to their own brothers and sisters, their own Jewish brothers and sisters. I don't mean family brothers and sisters, I mean as a culture. They were selling themselves back as slaves to themselves. And when Nehemiah figured out what was going on, I'm jumping ahead down in verse 9 of Nehemiah 5, so I continue. I said, hey, he gets them all together in a meeting. He said, everybody, front and center. And he said, what you're doing isn't right. Shouldn't you walk in the fear of our God to avoid the reproach of our Gentile enemies? Look what you're doing. Look at the example. Look what you're saying to everybody. Look what's happening here. I and my brothers and my men are also lending the people money and grain, but let the exacting of usury stop. You want to loan them money, that's okay, but stop with the usury. Now, usury is different from just interest. Usury was too much interest, charging too much interest. And verse 11 says, give back to them immediately their fields, the vineyards, olive groves, and houses, and also the usury you are charging them, the 100th part of the money, grain, and new wine and oil. You know what usury was? 1%. They were charging them 1%, and that was considered usury. Think about that next time you pay taxes. And they all got together and they said, you know what, you're right. We will give it back, and we're not going to demand anything more from them. We'll do as you say. And then I summoned the priests and made the nobles and officials take an oath to do what they had promised. So he was able to bring them together and define the source of the problem and create a solution that was to the benefit of everybody. That's exactly what a person with the gift of administration can do.